This next shade is the most beautiful shade in the palette. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, and today is installation 4, 5, 6 of duping new palettes exactly, or as exactly as possible with palettes I already own. I'm still all wet from the shower because I just got home from work, and working in a hospital I shower like right when I get home, but I kind of like the wet hair look. I always think I look pretty, like more pretty than I normally feel, like straight out of the shower. So now y'all can kind of share that experience with me of looking at myself when I still have wet hair. So today's palette is the new Colourpop Wild Nothings palette. Immediately when I saw this palette, I was like, that looks like the She's Got Solstice palette, but with 3 more shades. When you look at side-by-side swatches of the She's Got Solstice versus Wild Nothings, they're very similar. So I was kind of like, why is this palette even existing, the new one? But She's Got Solstice is actually an Ulta exclusive palette, so I suppose it lets other people kind of have that color story if they want to order from Colourpop, but they don't have access to an Ulta. But still, if you have She's Got Solstice, you don't need this new palette. I don't have She's Got Solstice. I was tempted by it for the same reasons I'm tempted by the Wild Nothings palette. I've been really digging the pink with green combination lately. That's the same reason why I was tempted by the Natasha Denona mini retro palette. But you know what I don't need? Any of those. So I made my own Colourpop Wild Nothings palette. I actually made it a point to myself to choose only among my Colourpop eyeshadow palettes, except for one shade that I actually didn't have a comparable shade within my own Colourpop palettes. So this is from Alamar. So first, let's take a look at those swatches. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll subscribe before you go. I would love to have you. If I were to post these arm swatches on my Insta stories or on other social medias, I have a feeling that people would think that it's the Colourpop Wild Nothings palette, because I think I did a really good job. So let's compare those 2 palettes now. My swatches are on top, and these swatches are from Makeup.just.for.fun. Amanda, she has a very valuable channel, and she does all sorts of Colourpop videos, so I will of course link her channel and the video I got these from down below. And I don't know, y'all, I think I did good. Now that I've shown you all the arm swatches, I'm going to go through each of these shades very quickly and just tell you where I got them from, and I will show you a swatch of each one like live on my palm hand. I pulled 11 out of the 12 shades from these Colourpop palettes, so you can see just starting off where I will be pulling them from. If you ever see me looking this way, it's because my notes are over here. So the first shade in the Wild Nothings palette is Crystal Cove, and this is a matte warm ivory with pinpoints of silver and gold pearl. The corresponding shade for my collection is from the Colourpop I Think I Love You palette. I'm not going to say Colourpop going forward in all these shades. All of the round ones are from Colourpop. So this is I Think I Love You Rowdy, and this is just a cream with a little bit of sparkle, like those mattes with glitters that for some reason became really popular lately. A swatch of that I Think I Love You Rowdy for Crystal Cove, and not very exciting. The second shade in the Wild Nothings palette is Sultan, and this is a Super Shock shade described as a white gold with pinpoints of gold and silver pearl. The twin from my collection, I also picked a Super Shock, which I'm really kind of proud of. Slightly proud of, because I even have the same texture, the same formula of shadow. So this is from the Pretty Guardian eyeshadow palette that Colourpop did in collaboration with Sailor Moon, and the name of this shade is Silver Millennium. So in the original palette, it's the shade that would be right here. Swatch of Silver Millennium. This is kind of a topper shade, so the base is more clear, and what comes through are the sparkles. So there is Silver Millennium, and I will build up one more layer of that. And this, because it's a Super Shock, you can layer it up many times to get your desired effect. If you haven't already entered my giveaway, I'm giving away 2 of the Colourpop Sailor Moon Pretty Guardian eyeshadow palettes. I'll link that video in my description box, so yeah, enter! The third shadow in Wild Nothings is Coastline, which is described as a metallic icy tangerine. So this one, I admit, I did not find the best exact dupe for, but the thing is, like, looking in the pan of the original palette, it looks quite dark, but in the swatches and how it will actually perform, it pretty much just looked like a champagne highlight shade. So for that, I picked from my So Jaded palette, Pearl. Here is where Pearl would be in the original palette. Here is a swatch of that. This is a very strong metallic. It would function beautifully as the highlight shimmer shade of the palette. The fourth shade in Wild Nothings is called Top Down. For that, I picked Royal Jewels from So Jaded. Royal Jewels would have been in this spot in the original palette. If I'm showing you all the original palette because sometimes just the name of a shade doesn't really mean anything. I have to see where it is in the palette. So this is where Royal Jewels would be. Here is a swatch of that matte peach, and then wiggle it to spread it out. The fifth shade is Morningside, which is described as a matte muted peach, whereas the previous shade was described as matte peach. This is a matte muted peach. But the thing is, like, the shade is actually darker than the one prior to it, so I don't really understand the naming, but I picked a matte peachy color. This is again from So Jaded, and this is the last shadow from that palette. This shade is called, I forgot what it was called. This shade is called You're a Gem. In the original palette, as I have been showing you, You're a Gem is in this place. Here is a swatch of the matte muted peach. This next shade is the most beautiful shade in the palette, and the one that anyone who's drawn to it is probably drawn to it for this shade, and that's the green one. This is Seashells in the original palette, and that's described as a metallic icy moss with pinpoints of silver pearl. And looking at that palette, I was looking at it like, can I dupe that palette? And I was worried that this shade would pretty much be the one that I couldn't dupe, but I did. And honestly, this formula is so much better than the Colourpop one would have been. The replacement shadow is from the Alamar Reina del Caribe palette. The shade is El Malecon. These are all depotted, but I'm showing you the place. El Malecon is the softest, creamiest, I'm not even going to say the softest, creamiest green shade. I'm saying this formula, these shimmers are like the softest in my entire collection. Yeah, wow. But this is that shade, so let me give you a swatch. Every time I touch these shades again and swatch them, I am blown away. They're even more metallic than Juvia's Place. So here is that El Malecon. Speechless. This is why I do this exercise where I try to go through and find dupes, because I'm reminded that I have this, and if I had gotten the thing that I wanted, I maybe wouldn't even use it that much because I have this thing that I like probably a lot more than I would have liked the new one. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the seventh shade in the Wild Nothings palette is Alcove, which is a metallic icy orange with pinpoints of silver and pink pearl. For this, I grabbed from my Sweet Talk palette the shade Melody, which would be right here. Melody is a gorgeous shade. It has like a orange, peachy, pink base with a very strong gold reflect. Here is the dupe for Alcove. And I'm going to layer that up one more time so we can see more of the shine and the reflect. So layer number 2. This is actually not the best place on my hand to show it, but even still, look at that. Every time I do one of these videos, I just stan all of my eyeshadows. Shade number 8 is Spirited in the original palette, Spirited, and that is a warm taupe with pinpoints of silver and gold pearl. I didn't realize, but all of these descriptions have pinpoints of silver and gold pearl. But I'm reading you the direct description from Colourpop. So this is also a Super Shock shadow in the original palette. However, I couldn't find a Super Shock of my own to match this. But this shade is one of my favorite shades in my entire collection, and that is from my Going Coconuts palette. The shade that I got to dupe it is Cocoa Crush. As you can see, I found a lot of dupes from the Going Coconuts palette, so you'll be seeing the other shades too. The pan of Spirited in the photos looks much darker than this one does, but In Makeup Just for Fun's or Amanda's, in her video, after she like touched it and you kind of smush it in the pan a little bit, there's more of a dip so you can see the reflect and see how bright the shade will really look on the eye. So despite it not looking exactly the same in the pan, I still picked Cocoa Crush for how it looked on the skin. So corresponding to the swatch pretty much. That was a lot of words to say that. Here's a swatch of Cocoa Crush. Ooh, wow. This row, like the second row of the palette is, I have no words. What is English? This is like everything I dreamed that palette could be, and I have it. I also like doing this exercise to encourage y'all to do the same thing in your own collection, because if you're watching me, odds are that you have more than one eyeshadow palette, that you have quite a few. And it's actually been so fun to see y'all doing this too, inspired by me. And I know I'm not the only one who does this. Like the concept of duping new palettes with what you own is just an exercise that a lot of people do to talk themselves out of buying new things if we're on a low buy, on a no buy, just generally trying to be a smarter consumer and not fall into the throes of capitalism. Let's move on to shade number 9. And in the original palette, that is Vagabond, described as a matte, warm, saddle brown. I pulled this palette from my Sweet Talk palette. That shade is West Side, which would have been right here, or it was right there. Here's West Side, a matte, warm, saddle brown. The 9th shade is, aside from the green, the one that also caught my eye. The second place, I guess, of my fantasy favorite, if in that fantasy is me buying this palette. The description of Hot Springs is, again with the gold and silver pearl, but it's described as a soft matte berry with pinpoints of silver and gold pearl. What that means in the matte shadows is the mattes with glitters throughout them. The shade that I pulled is called Yeah. It's really called Yeah, and that is from my Going Coconuts palette. And this is just a matte, not a matte with glitters. Oh my gosh, it's not just called Yeah. I knew that sounded weird. It's called Shell Yeah, and that is in this place. This is like the most pink tone of the colors. So of course, this is the one that caught my eye the most. And this is my favorite matte in the Going Coconuts palette. And isn't it crazy that when I'm describing to you the shades that I picked for this palette and this video in particular, almost everyone, I'm like, this is my favorite one from this. This is the best of this. This is my, like, I'm just saying how much I love all these shades. And that really goes to show you how much I really did like the color scheme of Wild Nothings. So anyway, here is the Shell Yeah from Going Coconuts. Every time I film one of these videos, I am, for some reason, surprisingly and repeatedly shocked at how much this really is helping me with my wanting. Because I seriously have zero desire to buy that palette now, because I have this gorgeous, gorgeous thing in my very own hands at the moment right now. The second to last shade, or the 11th shade in the original palette, is called Come Together, and that's described as a mid-tone matte brown. This is my dupe, pulled from the Going Coconuts palette, and this is the shade, oh my god, I almost dropped it. This is the shade Lovely Bunch, which is the more neutral slash cool mid-tone brown from the Going Coconuts palette in this place. I know I talked about the middle row, but I was actually very drawn to the colorway, the color scheme of the bottom row. I think that this is just a beautiful combination of mattes, especially for my taste, because these are the tones of mattes that I am the most comfortable using because they're my favorite. Oh my gosh, again with the favorite. Geez, do I dislike things? I swear I dislike things. But give me like boring tan browns and a pink toned, almost brown. Okay, stop talking, Sally. Here is a swatch of Lovely Bunch, that mid-toned matte brown. And even though in the pan, maybe these two shades looked similar in the original palette, this one really is much warmer, and the second mid-tone brown had almost like more, it had less orange in it, of course, because it's not as warm, but you could kind of see a mauve quality of it coming through, and I think that hopefully this can reflect that a bit. Last shade is a dark deep brown, and in the original palette that's called No Bounds, like no bounds, like no boundaries. In my collection, I picked from the Going Coconuts palette the matte called Nutty. That is the bottom rightmost shade. This is a blackened brown. Here's a swatch of Nutty. And I'm gonna even that out because that was a terrible swatch on my part. But there you go, that's Muddy. Did I say muddy? Nutty. That's nutty, nutty. Those are all 12. This has come to be my favorite series or favorite kinds of videos to film because I just love touching like my eyeshadow palettes, and any excuse for me to just go through and swatch all the eyeshadows I'm totally down with. And also because it's functional. It really does serve a purpose for me. It's not really a waste of time. Okay, I admit that it could be a waste of time, but at least it has like a benefit to it, you know? Bam! This is a good use of an hour and a half of my life plus an hour of filming and getting ready to film, and also all the time it's going to take to edit this video, but it was a good use of time. It was a good use of time. Plus, I get to provide a little bit of entertainment for y'all, which I consider my job in this thing that's not my job, but it's just a hobby. I just want to continue to reiterate to y'all that y'all are my treasure, like for real. In times where I'm stressed, I just come up with all these video ideas, and I'm also kind of sad that I can't do them all because I just don't have the time to. There aren't enough hours in a day. Like videos like this, when I get so excited to film it, I've decided to film it, I've planned it, I've taken all my notes, I've selected all the shades. For example, in this concept, just get so excited to film it and share it with y'all, and it keeps me up actually at night just from the excitement, and it brings me joy that sometimes I can't find in the rest of my life. So thank you so much for being here, spending your time with me, engaging in my content. If you do, if you don't, I still thank you. Also, give this video a thumbs up if you like it. It lets me know what y'all like and what I should film. And if you want to say something nice to me in the comments, please do. That's all from me today. Woo woo! I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had fun, because I had fun, and I hope that comes through on camera that I'm having fun every moment that I'm with y'all. Y'all are my treasure. Find the beauty in every day, but most importantly, be kind to yourself. I'll see you in my next videos. Bye!